Hey, Mario. It's Christina. Just waiting for others to join and then we'll get started.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Hi, team.
Hi, all. Just waiting on a few more board members to join us.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How are you today? Enjoying the weather somewhat?
Well, some of us at central office do not have windows, so we're imagining that it's really sunny out there.
Yeah, enjoying it from the inside.
Our hearts are sunny. How's that?
There you go.
I believe we're giving one more minute for a few more board members to join. Oh, there's one more board member. Sweet.
Good afternoon.
Good
Good
afternoon.
afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Okay.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Francoise Darastel Ledger, and I'm the chair of the Teaching and Learning Committee. And I'd like to, for the Hartford Board of Education, and we'll get started now with our meeting. Thank you for joining us today. And what we're going to do is we're going to popcorn around the room and just introduce ourselves and our roles. And I will start with Sharice Eiffel.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sharice Eiffel, Special Projects Manager with HPS. And I'll pass it to Jen Hoffman.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jen Hoffman, Assistant Superintendent for Special Education and Pupil Services for the district. I will pass to Erin Doyle.
Hey, everybody, my name is Erin Doyle. I'm the Acting Assistant Director of Intervention and Expanded Learning Opportunities. And I will pass it to, sorry, I'm moving something around, Duncan Young.
Hi, everyone. I'm Duncan Young. I'm the CEO of Effective School Solutions. We'll be presenting to you shortly about some of our mental health support initiatives with HPS. And I'll pass it to my colleague, Amy Barrett.
Thanks, Duncan. Hi, everybody. My name is Amy Barrett. I am the project director with ESS overseeing our 9 clinical programs with the district. I will pass it to Mark.
Good evening. I'm Mario Carullo, Director of Math, and I will pass it to Superintendent Torres Rodriguez.
Hi, everyone. Superintendent Torres Rodriguez. Good to see you all. I'm going to tag Miss Wheeler, Hannah Wheeler.
Hi all, Hannah Wheeler. I am a Special Projects Manager for Hartford Public Schools, and I will pass to Miss Yvette Bayo.
Hola, hola. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Yvette Bello. I answer to all other things too. Happy to be with you all this afternoon and excited to hear more about our work today. And I am on the board of directors. And I will pass it to Shantae in the car.
Good afternoon, everyone. Shantae Brody, board member. And to whomever have not gone yet.
I don't think I've gone. I mean, not that I don't think I've gone. I know I haven't gone. Christina Santiago, board liaison. And I believe that is everyone.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And welcome everyone once again. And Christina, can we please have the agenda?
Absolutely. Can you see the screen? Everyone? Okay.
Now I do. Okay. Okay. I don't see details.
Okay. Well, I could just read it off real quick. There's 2 items on the agenda. We have the contract continuation approval for Effective School Solutions. And then we have an update on our math curriculum. So let me know if you want me to kick it off. That's it.
Okay, yes, thank you so much. And if we can, who will be presenting for our first agenda item?
So actually the superintendent is going to kick it off, and then we have Ms. Jen Hoffman, who you've all been introduced to, and members of the ESS team, and Ms. Erin. So we'll start with.
Okay, let's get started.
Okay, and I'll stop.
Thank you, everyone. And I'm actually sitting here, I'm subbing for Dr. Negron, who can't join us this evening. And I'm just going to introduce the request of continuation of our work to improve our student mental health and resource to reduce out of district placements, essentially. And just to give you an overview, a reminder, so last year you approved the partnership with ESS. They're a regional leader in providing school-based mental health care for students to dramatically strengthen the district's mental health support continuum. It is in direct alignment to our tiered system of support, and is specifically an initiative that is designed to counter the anticipated increase in frequency and intensity of mental health challenges, and also to ensure that our existing clinical staff is not, right, they're not overwhelmed, and that we continue to lay the foundation of a higher level of in-district mental health programming that serves as quite frankly, a less costly and more effective alternative to outplacing many of our students, right? We just finished the budget process. We had a lot of conversation about our rising costs relative to special education, specifically outplacements. And so this is one of the reasons why this is a key partnership for us. And the team is going to go through some progress updates and do a little dive into some of the data to show the impact, the positive impact that their partnership and the supports directly across some of our schools have had on student engagement as defined by discipline, reductions in discipline referrals, suspensions, and progress in terms of academics and attendance as well. So I'm gonna actually tag in Ms. Hoffman so that she can kind of continue to give an overview. And I know that Ms. Doyle is here as well, making the connections to the tiered process, and then you can tag in Ms. Hoffman after that, ESS.
Erin, can you pull up the deck? We were actually, just in the interest of time, going to go right into the slide deck. So I will pass to Duncan to start that overview.
Great. Thanks, Jen. I appreciate it. It's really nice to speak with, I've spoken with some of you previously in the last couple of years. For those of you who I have had the opportunity to speak with, nice to speak with you again. For those who are new to the board, nice to meet you for the first time. I'm Duncan Young, CEO at Effective School Solutions. I'm joined by two colleagues today who will be assisting with the presentation, Amy Barrett, who's our project director in Hartford, and Joanne Malinka, who is our regional clinical director, who oversees all of our work in Connecticut. And we work with about 25 districts across the state right now. It's really been a privilege to partner with HPS in this second year of our work together. We're going to give you, as Dr. Torres Rodriguez mentioned, overview as to some of the data and impact that is really demonstrated by our work with almost 100 students with very kind of intense need through our work across 8 schools. Can we go to the next slide? So a couple of objectives for today. We're just going to briefly review the scope of services offered by ESS and really try to point out where ESS fits into the continuum of mental health care offered by the district. We are not meant to replace anything that's currently taking place in the district. We're really meant to complement, as Dr. Torres Rodriguez mentioned, the amazing work that is taking place by HPS staff by offering a higher level of care within the school environment. We'll talk a little bit about some of the data and statistics about the youth mental health needs, both across the country, the region, and at HPS specifically. We'll talk about student and school outcomes from the project this year, and then we'll review the proposed scope of work for 2023-2024. So a brief overview of our current model. Again, ESS is a Tier 3 mental health support for students in HPS. I'm going to speak in a couple of slides about what we mean specifically by a Tier 3 level of support. We are currently operating in 8 neighborhood, middle, and comprehensive high schools with a clinical team, an on-site clinical team of 13 staff. That's an increase of 2 clinical staff members from last year. This year, we had the opportunity to begin work at Burr Middle School and Betances STEM Middle School for the 2022-2023 school year. Our clinicians are currently servicing 85 students, and we have 11 students that are pending, which means we're expecting them to join the ESS caseload in the next couple of weeks. ESS provides a combination of in-school individual therapy, group therapy, family therapy, and just-in-time supports. We refer to this level of care as a wraparound level of care. So this is not the type of thing where a student is getting one individual therapy session every 2 or 3 weeks. We're generally providing multiple therapeutic touch points for students every single day. And we're typically talking about the 2 to 3% of students within a school environment who have the most intensive emotional and behavioral challenges, and who often are taking up a significant amount of time, on the existing school staff. And we're really there, as Dr. Torres Rodriguez mentioned, to provide additional support for those students, but also to help be a force multiplier for the other HPS staff members so that they can serve more students at a lower level of care. One of the things that we're very, very proud of and that we focus on is the ability of Tier 3 services to keep students in district. A large proportion of students that we're servicing are students who have risk factors for being placed out of district in the future. And I'm pleased to report that we had an outplacement prevention rate of 98% for students who are on the ESS caseload. So for every 100 students that we're servicing, only 2 of those higher risk students required placement to a private therapeutic day school outside of the district. ESS, as I mentioned, provides an advanced level of care meant to go above and beyond what HPS is generally providing on its own. And we don't work in isolation. The communication protocols that we try to put in place, we're really trying to operate as a direct extension of your team. Amy is in the district floating among schools each and every day. Our staff members are embedded in one and only one school, so they're able to build close relationships with the building administration, with their colleagues on the HPS clinical teams. And we're really aiming to operate as one team in support of students in need. Next slide, please. You have all probably seen a lot of data and statistics over the past couple of years about the youth mental health crisis, the youth mental health epidemic in the US. These are the results of a survey that we actually conducted with the Zogby Group back in the fall. This was 250 administrators and 1,000 parents across the country. And these statistics will probably not be surprising. 90% of school administrators and 6 out of 10 parents believe that there's a growing youth mental health crisis. 6 out of 10 administrators say that the problem is the same or worse than a year ago. And just about 100% state that the problem is worse than it was pre-COVID. So there was already a significant mental health challenge before the pandemic. The pandemic, of course, introduced a lot of trauma into the lives of young people, which really increased the acuity levels of mental health challenges that they were experiencing. What's not on the slide here, but which I'll also point out from the surveys, the changing roles that parents have around the role of school systems when it comes to mental health support. Our survey showed that 80% of parents believe that schools should have a moderate or significant role in delivering mental health care. And there are other studies that show that students are anywhere from 6 to 21 times more likely to access care and to complete a course of mental health treatment when that treatment is offered within a school environment. So schools have a really critical role to play when it comes to the mental health of our young people. This quote at the bottom is very powerful. The Surgeon General last year declared a youth mental health emergency. And in doing that, he shared the following quote: imagine a high school with 1,000 students. Now imagine about 450 of them saying they're persistently sad or hopeless, 200 saying they've seriously considered suicide, and nearly 100 saying they've tried to end their own life over the past year. That is the state of youth mental health in America. So very, very sobering and concerning statistics that we see nationwide around youth mental health outcomes. Next slide. So why ESS? Again, as I mentioned before, ESS is really designed to help school districts address a couple of critical needs that are out there. First of all, we're there to help address the increase in mental health challenges that have occurred since the pandemic. Second, we're meant to help address the ongoing shortage of school psychologists and social workers, particularly those individuals who have experience operating at a higher level of care. So, when we bring on staff members to support HPS, we generally are not bringing on individuals who have school experience as much. We're bringing on individuals who have a lot of experience working in intensive outpatient facilities, in residential treatment facilities. And in bringing on those individuals, we're really looking to complement and augment what the district offers on its own by essentially creating a high-functioning, full-service, high acuity mental health clinic that's operating in those 8 sites across the district. This is an illustration that shows how ESS fits into the multi-tiered systems of support framework that the district has adopted. So again, MTSS is something that I'm sure you're all familiar with, multiple levels of care corresponding to multiple levels of student need. And what this graph really illustrates is that ESS is operating at the very top of this pyramid at a tier that we would call tier 3+. We do have some services that extend down into the tier 3 and the tier 2 level, but the vast majority of what we do is servicing those 2 to 3% of students in the school environment who have the most intensive mental health, emotional, behavioral challenges, students that really require more highly structured, longer duration care than what most school districts provide on their own. And often students who are either returning from an out-of-district placement or students who are at risk of being outplaced to a private school at some point in the future. Generally, all of the students that we're servicing are students who have already experienced and been through some of the lower levels of care that are being offered, and it's been determined that they really need additional higher levels of support. And we're really providing that higher level of support to accommodate the needs of those students and hopefully keep them in district so that they can benefit from everything that HPS has to offer. So when we talk about a tier 3 program design, there's a couple things that I'll point out that are important here that really go above and beyond just clinicians on the ground kind of in schools. So, you know, at ESS, a couple of the key elements of our model are a comprehensive evidence-based clinical program design. Again, this is not just therapy once or twice per week or once or twice per month. This is multiple therapeutic touch points throughout the school year. That generally looks like daily group therapy, weekly individual therapy, biweekly family therapy, and then as needed supports for students whenever they need additional assistance throughout the school day. Second, a highly qualified team with acute care expertise. The key thing I would emphasize there is that acute care expertise that I mentioned before. Number 3, family support is a very, very critical part of what we do. So we have family therapy embedded as a very kind of a pivotal part of our model. And that's kind of formal family therapy. We do multiple informal touch points with the parents of the students that we're serving, often multiple times per week. As an external provider, we also have an ability to do home visits and to offer extended hours. So we actually have all of our clinicians are contracted to stay after hours at least one night per week so that we can accommodate the various working schedules that family members have and make sure that we can fit that family therapy into their schedule. Clinical supervision, quality, and risk management. These are very, very important components of a more medical model of mental health care. Quality and risk management, what that looks like is we have a team of 7 auditors that sit in our home office, and they're actually going through and providing an additional set of review on all of the clinical records that we store on behalf of HPS. And what we're looking for there is the presence of any high-risk issues that might not have been detected during the therapeutic interaction. So if those high-risk issues are there, we can get immediate additional support to the student and get them escalated to a higher level of care. Talent acquisition, we have a full-time 5-person staffing team that makes sure that ensures that we have the right staff members supporting HPS at all times. We also have a team of what we call floaters. These are substitute clinicians. So if we have a staff member that goes out on vacation, we've got a floater who can come in there and cover that absence. And then finally, we're providing clinical data storage, data analysis, and progress monitoring services for the district. And Amy, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Duncan. So we're starting with, like Duncan was talking about, with the healthcare epidemic or the mental health epidemic in the country. The data here is showing that the number of high-risk incidents by month of this school year, as you can see, our students transitioned back to school in September, October, with an increase in challenging situations that they were demonstrating, followed by a gradual decline of incidents throughout the school year. As they settled into programming and as they were able to work with our staff to meet some of their therapeutic goals. Typically, the students in the ESS programming often present, like Duncan has said, with acute problems that we are addressing in treatment. So they're unable to or struggle with regulating their emotions. They have experienced complex trauma and grief and loss in their history. They have symptoms of anxiety, depression, and other mental health issues, incidents of suicidal ideation or school avoidance. And then down the bottom, all of those issues addressed in that right-hand side column typically result in some of our high-risk incidents, which we track throughout the year. Things like physical aggression, suicide attempts, like I mentioned, different kinds of screenings, psychiatric or risk screenings, elopement, anytime we're calling the police or the schools are calling the police. So those types of needs that are being addressed is just a way to track some of the issues that the students that on our caseloads are presenting with. Okay. So as of earlier this month, students in ESS programming have received almost 7,000 sessions. Like Duncan was saying, the multiple touch points per day. The majority of these contacts have been through individual therapy sessions and crisis response or the as needed sessions, followed by family therapy sessions. For our families, most of our students are getting 1 to 2 family sessions per month. The clinicians also do weekly check-ins with the families, which is not included in that bullet point there, but is the ongoing communications with our families throughout the week, in addition to the formal family therapy. Okay. All right, my notes. So this is looking at the average weekly services per student. For the majority of the year, the number of weekly sessions has been above the ESS benchmark and improving. The fact that students are utilizing services at a high rate is suggestive of implementation fidelity to the model as the year goes on, as well as development of therapeutic rapport and trust with the clinicians. So our tier 3, oh, go ahead. It's okay here. I was just going to say that our students in the tier 3 plus, they're getting about 3.4 sessions per week.
Thanks, Amy. So the next couple of slides are going to go through some of the impact on absenteeism, attendance, and discipline and grades. And so I think we've got some great data to report out on each of these 3 metrics. So we look at absenteeism in a couple of different ways. The first thing we track is the percentage of students that exhibit chronic absenteeism. And I believe that's 5 or more absences per marking period. And so what this data indicates is that, and what I should explain here is the graph here is showing a baseline level, and that is the percentage of students who exhibited chronic absenteeism in their last marking period before entering ESS services. And then the yellow bar shows the percentage of students with chronic absenteeism after they entered ESS services. So as you can see, the levels of chronic absenteeism went from 63% pre-ESS to 47% post-ESS. We want that number to be 0. And so we're continuing to work on that, but really good progress, I think, here with students kind of on the caseload. The other thing that we look at is the average number of absences per student. And as you can see down at the bottom, that number has decreased by 20%. So that's average absences per student per marking period has gone down by 20%. And that is in line with what we would expect to see with a tier 3 level of service. Next slide. Okay, the next thing we look at is discipline. So this is average discipline incidents per marking period. The baseline data before ESS intake, that was 1.5. After ESS intake, that number goes down by 20% to 1.2. And importantly, down at the bottom, you'll see that 71%, 7 out of 10 students in ESS either reduced or maintained their weekly disciplinary incidents. So again, things moving in the right direction here as well. From a GPA standpoint, average GPA for students in ESS increased by 17% over baseline. And again, 7 out of 10 students either increased or maintained their GPA versus where they were prior to entering into ESS services. Generally, what we see is a very clear progression on these things in terms of how improvement takes place. Attendance is usually the first thing to improve. Discipline is usually the second thing to improve. A GPA tends to be a little bit more of a lagging indicator, because for students to fully engage and improve with their academics, we need to A, get them into school, and then B, keep them, engaged and kind of well-regulated in the classroom environment. Okay, the next piece of data that we look at is therapeutic progress. So every week when our clinicians sit down with a student, we are asking students to rate their wellness on a 1 through 5 scale, and the clinician is doing their own rating of student wellness on a 1 to 5 scale. So again, one would be kind of the top level, and then 5 would be, kind of the student is exhibiting significant struggles. And if we go to the next slide, what we always want to see is a significant increase in positive student wellness over time. So what this graph shows is the student reported and the clinician reported levels of high wellness, positive wellness, based on the number of weeks that a student has been in treatment. So the blue line is the student self-reporting. We see that goes up by about 10 percentage points. And then the black line is the clinician reported. We see that goes from about 25% of students exhibiting positive wellness, all the way up to almost 50% of students exhibiting positive wellness. So almost a doubling of positive wellness reports after about 24 weeks in the program. Amy, I think you're on mute.
Sorry about that. So within the past month or so, students receiving ESS programming completed student satisfaction surveys that asked them to rate the items on the right side on a scale of strongly agree to strongly disagree, or excuse me, on the left side. In addition, within the 33 responses that we received back, 93% of the ESS students were satisfied or very satisfied with being a part of ESS. So that's a really nice perspective from the students themselves, that they see the program working, which is a nice supplement to their wellness ratings that are increasing. Okay. So on the student surveys, the students had the opportunity to include comments. So included here is a comment from some of the different programmings. One of the themes that came out of their comments was that the students felt that they've improved their ability to regulate their emotions and better cope with stressors, which is super important in keeping them in class and seeing the effect on all of the indicators that Duncan just mentioned. So it's nice that they are recognizing that they feel a difference in themselves within the ESS programming. And then parents were also asked to complete a survey of their experience with ESS. 84% of the 25 responses received indicated that parents are satisfied or very satisfied with their ESS experience, and that ESS has been beneficial to the child and their family as a whole. And then again, parents had the opportunity to leave a comment. A theme here was that the parents' observations of change at home and students' ability to express their feelings, which was very similar to the students' response. We saw a nice mirroring of the two surveys. And then.
Yeah. So what this graph shows is the number of urgent non-scheduled sessions that ESS is providing every week. So as the superintendent mentioned, another goal of providing this level of care is to help free up the time of other HPS clinical staff members so that they have the ability to address that broader number of students who require lower levels of care that need support. So these urgent non-scheduled sessions, the clinical term for that is a PRN session. I think there's a Greek term that corresponds to. But what this basically shows is the average number of PRN sessions per week at each of our schools. And that ranges anywhere from 2 sessions all the way up to 11 sessions. So we're sharing this data because this is indicative of time savings for other staff members within the building. If ESS wasn't providing the support, this would generally be kind of another HPS staff member, another clinical staff member that would need to redirect what they're doing to kind of address this. So our goal here again is to help provide more care for all students, even beyond the students that we're directly servicing, by helping to free up time and capacity for HPS staff members to be able to service more students in need. And then final slide for next year, the goal is really to continue the current partnership footprint for next year. So the plan, and Ms. Hoffman and Ms. Doyle, feel free to jump in on this, would be to continue to operate at the 8 schools in which we are currently operating, and to continue this same constellation of in-school clinical supports, family therapy sessions, group therapy sessions, just-in-time support, and making sure that we're really kind of continuing that very, very strong partnership with school staff. Having been in the second year of partnership, I think both we would observe on the ESS side, and I believe would be the same on the HPS side, year 2 is always easier than year 1 because the relationships are established. A lot of what we work on early on is establishment of the referral pathways. So we need to make sure that we, as an external provider, are seamlessly integrating into the referral pathways and the multi-tiered systems of support framework that you set up within the district. And so we learned a lot, I think, in our first year together, understanding how we can seamlessly fit into that. And I think we're seeing a lot of the benefits for students here in year 2. I'd love to pause here and would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much for that presentation. I do have a couple of questions, and then I will check to see if we have any board members or anyone else who's on the call who may have some questions. The first question I have is approximately how many students is ESS directly servicing?
So as of
So-
today, we're at 85 students.
How many?
85, and we have 11 additional pending who are working through the referral process.
85, you said?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And the next question I have is, of these 85 students, how many students of these students have IEPs or 504s? If any?
Yes, there are a significant amount that do. Off the top of my head, we'll get back to you on the exact number. We don't have that here. Well, I'll make a note and get back to you.
Okay.
Generally at a tier 3 level, Francoise, it's going to be about 70-80% is what we see on a kind of organizational wide level. Jen, I don't know if you have a good sense as to what that is, but I would agree with Amy. It's going to be a significant number, and we can get back to you with the precise number on that.
Okay, thank you. And the last question I'm going to ask, and I'm going to, pass it off. Are there any supports in place for the classrooms where these students, like whether it's the homeroom or the classroom teacher, where the students are, spend the majority of their time? Should there be any decompensation or any incident or, something that may take place where there may need to be a triage of some sort?
Yes, absolutely.
Great question. Yeah.
Thank you. Part of our PRN responses are based on, if a student's having an issue in a classroom, a student can call over to the office. Our staff will respond directly and push into the class if needed. We work with all of our students to develop what we call reset plans. So it's a plan to identify their triggers and how the adults and them can respond in situations where they're struggling. And then we also work within some of our students' behavior plans. So we provide scheduled breaks, also non-scheduled breaks if a student is struggling in a class. We partner with our buildings to work on some of the different daily charts that our students might be on, part of the behavior plans or just their incentive systems. So there's lots of different kind of ways that we are pushing into the classrooms to support the teachers and the students in that environment before we're pulling out for issues that are occurring.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, one last question and then I'm going to defer. Because this is very, this is great work that you're doing, very big work, very important work. What is the percentage of the students, or how many students approximately are, reading on grade level? How proficient are they?
Can I, Jen, would you happen to know any of that information?
I think we'd have to go individually for each student and get that information. So
we love doing additional data analyses for the district. And so, yeah, Jen, if we can link up with you and kind of access that data, we'd be happy to kind of run that and even link that to like amount of service received, because that's ideally what we want to demonstrate as, increased level of service hopefully leads to increased gains in literacy, mathematics, et cetera.
Okay, thank you. So I would love that information. When you can get that to us. And I will now, because I've taken up, I was being a little stingy with the time, I apologize. So I do see a number of hands up. I don't know if Board Member Brody's hand up went up first or Board Member Bello. So I will defer to whoever.
Don't ask us to pick, Francoise. That's too much pressure. So
okay. I'll say Board Member, I'll start with, I'll do it alphabetically. So I'll start with Board Member, I'll go with first, Shante. Board Member Brody, the floor is yours.
Thank you for the presentation. So out of, first, what is the capacity of students you're able to serve?
Approximately 120 students. Some of our programs have a 2 clinician model and some of the programs have a 1 clinician model. So that's where we landed about the 120.
the caseload is generally 10 students, 10 concurrent students per clinician, which is generally a lower caseload, but that's kind of in concert with the higher level of student need. And so we can provide that higher level of wraparound support. We always try to work with all of our district partners to figure out where we want to be on kind of what we call a census utilization standpoint. And generally, and I believe it's the case here, we always want to keep a few seats in reserve for students that might appear kind of later on in the year with more significant challenges. And those 11 students that Amy mentioned that are pending right now, that's indicative of kind of that additional wave of students that we're onboarding right now, even though it's a little bit later in the year.
Okay, because on the slide that referenced service breakdown, there was some numbers there. I don't know which slide it was.
I think right here.
Yes. So is this you as an entire organization? Is that what this is referencing?
No, this is us as an organization in Hartford. This is just the data, for the students that we have served this school year in Hartford through March 11th of this year. So it's really September 1st through March 11th.
So that's 3,500 to students. That's, well, the group could include them too, but is that 36 individual sessions?
Yeah, so there's been 6,758 total sessions. And then if we break that into the component parts, 3,536 of those have been pre-scheduled individual therapy sessions. That's the weekly individual therapy that I referenced. The PRN sessions are also with students. Those are the more kind of in the moment, unscheduled interactions for a student, as Francoise mentioned, that might be decompensating or exhibiting a challenge in the moment. We would be kind of interacting with the student, and we did 1,191 of those. Family sessions are the biweekly family therapy that we mentioned. Admin sessions, these would be the ones, and Amy, correct me if I'm wrong, that would not be student facing. Those are interactions that we have had with an HPS staff member talking about a student case, strategizing coaching about how to support the student case. And then we've got our group therapy and then our kind of educational interactions as well. Does that help answer your question?
It does, but could we see this in the form of schools so we could have an idea of the, I'm gonna mute. Oh, I thought the car was gonna be so loud going behind. So we could see service breakdown per school.
100%, no problem at all. We could show like a little line graph that shows by school and how these numbers have actually maybe grown over the course of the year. Would that be helpful?
Yeah, because for a school, how many individual sessions were like for Weaver High School? How many for PRN, for Burr? Like just to give us an idea of the service that's being provided per school, and could it also include the amount of students in that particular school that are receiving services?
Yes, yeah, well, no problem at all, Ms. Brody. We'll do a chart and we'll show services by type, by school, and then we'll show those services per number of students, right? Because that ideally is what we want to try to get at. And the next chart, it actually gets at that a little bit, right? One of the key metrics that we track every week is number of services per student per week, and that's what this graph shows. And generally we're targeting with a tier 3+ level at least 3. And we want to, obviously see that go as high as is needed to support the needs kind of the student.
Okay, and I had a couple more questions, but Ms. Bayo, did not want to just hammer mine through, so I'll make room for you, and hopefully I could circle back in with my last 2 questions.
Thank you, Board Member Brody. I really appreciate it. I always love going after you because you always hit on the questions, at least 2 or 3 that I was thinking about as well. And same thing with Francois. I really appreciate the previous questions. So I was actually, one, I'll just echo on, this is first of all a timely conversation to have in light of what is happening in our schools and how it impacts our students. Not just the students that need this support, their families that need this support, but also the students that go to school with the students that need the support, right? This is all, important work. So I really want to just echo the holistic nature of this conversation, that while we're talking about, 85 students with an additional 11 pending, this really impacts all of our schools and inherently our district. So I want to just kind of, add gravitas to that. My comment was really about, again, just echoing the need to support our the entire school community, including our students in this tier. And so I look forward to hearing that. I did want to clarify just that, you're currently the vendor for, are you currently the vendor for just tier 3, or are you also working in conjunction with other vendors for tier 2 and tier 1 students? I know this is a part of our MTSS, so I just wanted to clarify that, and I don't know if that belongs with you, ESS, or the district itself. So willing to pause or table that if it's not appropriate here.
Jen, Aaron, would you like to take a first crack at that? I'll say that we are always looking to collaborate. Our view is that mental health care only works if the MTSS continuum works as a continuum and not as a series of disconnected pieces and parts. So we are very focused on making sure that we establish relationships with other clinical providers that are operating in the district, as well as the great work that's taking place from HPS staff. So, but Jen and Aaron, turn it over to you to talk about specifics on that.
Aaron, do you want to take MTSS?
Sure. I was just trying to find my unmute button. So thank you for that question. So our goal is for ESS to work in partnership with our school-based clinical supports, which include our school social workers. They also include our behavior technicians and our administrative teams, so that we can make sure that we do provide, as Duncan kind of referenced, that continuum of support and making sure that the right level of need is reaching the students, or the right level of support is reaching the students at the level of need that they're exhibiting. And so we would always want to have our tier 1 structures kind of present and in place at the school level. And that could include many of our regular behavioral support systems, both PBIS and restorative practices. But then as students move into that tier 2 level of need, that's where we really look to leverage our behavior technicians and our school social workers. And then as students potentially are needing more supports, we have school social workers that can provide more direct services, but they can also refer students as needed to outside clinical supports in the community, so that then that allows for students that are exhibiting that very high level of need, that where they are requiring a great deal of support within the school day, to really be supported by ESS, which allows school social workers to then be freed up enough to be able to work with other students at other levels of support.
Great. I really appreciate that sort of, conversation, because we do have a viewing public, and I wanted them to understand, and also just to understand myself, sort of where this fits in, right? What exactly, where are we talking about? What are we talking about in the continuum of MTSS? The other question I had was back on a slide regarding chronic absenteeism. If we can go back, I don't know if I'm reading it right or if it was fast. But I did see sort of, my question is, in some cases, we see it going in the wrong direction. Am I right to think that? And what's going on there?
Yeah. No, you are correct to see that. And I think there's probably 3 of the schools on the right-hand side where we are moving kind of in the direction we don't want to be moving in. And this is the reason we look at the data, is when the data is moving in the wrong direction. We're working with Ms. Doyle, Ms. Hoffman, the building staff, problem solving, understanding what is driving that and what we can do to address it. I'll turn it over to Amy to maybe, we don't want to, I think, get into, specific student cases, but Amy, you could probably talk about some of the high level trends. Often some of these numbers tend to be what I would call like outlier effects. So this could be, 1 or 2 students in particular that might be, exhibiting kind of a significant increase that maybe offsets some of the decreases that you're seeing with other students. But Amy, I'll turn it over to you for any thoughts that you have.
Sure. So that was my first point, was that specifically at Hartford High and Betances STEM, there are a few students on the caseload who are what we call school avoidant, who are kind of trending the data in the wrong way, like you noticed. So those are the students that we're working with our school avoidance protocols. We're doing home visits in the morning. We're trying to work with the parents to work on like nighttime morning routines. We're doing all that clinical work to get them back into school. That tends to be a longer term process before we start seeing a significant impact of them routinely getting into the school. So that's where we are at with those particular students who are the outliers that Duncan mentioned. We're in the kind of starting or in the middle of that like intensive exposure work to get those kiddos back into school.
Okay. And then just an observation that this isn't all of our schools in our district. So just to mention, maybe for the viewing public, why is that the case?
Jen or Aaron, would you like to take yeah.
Sure. When we started the partnership with ESS, we were looking at schools with significant need. So we originally did not have our comprehensive high schools on or slated for services, yet we saw as we were returning to in-person learning that there were some significant needs happening. So we shifted and put the 3 comprehensives in line with the supports. And then really we looked at really prior to COVID, what was happening in some schools with some of the data that you see here. So with attendance, definitely discipline, and that additionally that rate of referral to out of district placements.
Okay.
Yeah, when we did an upfront analysis, Ms. Bello, on the out of district placements, and we supported the district with this, it really showed that a disproportionate number of out of district placements occur in that grade 6 to 8 range. And so the kind of, I think, strategic decision at that point was, if we really want to make an impact on that, let's focus on the grade ranges that appears to be kind of the biggest challenge. And so that's why this is more kind of middle school focused right now. But again, with the addition of those high schools that really exhibited critical challenges after returning from virtual learning.
Thank you. I really appreciate that explanation. And I'll yield because I saw the time check. So yield to other questions from my fellow board members. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Board Member Bello. So we're gonna take, because of time, after the time check, we're gonna take one more question from, I know Board Member Brody has another question. If we could just take one question, because we still have the math presentation. And if after Board Member Brody's question, if there are more questions, which I know I do, I have some more information that I'd like more detailed information. I will get those questions to Christina so that she can get them to you, so that we can get the answers that we need. So
No problem at all.
thank you so much. And Board Member Brody?
Okay, so this might be a question for our staff in regards to the long game. Like, what is our plan to get to a place where we could actually, that we would not need the services? Are we, like, do we have a time frame in mind? Like, what is our exit plan, for the lack of a better term?
Thanks, Ms. Brody. I think initially, we want to look at how to sustain the partnership, and knowing that we will be coming to the end of funding. I do have a team in place that is looking at currently 3 separate grants that could potentially help fund and keep ESS in place. Long term, I'm hoping that we start to see a shift with potential candidates that we could hire, but knowing where we are right now with our national shortage with social workers, but I will also say other special education staff, that continues to be an area that we look at. And like I said, hopefully it will top out at some point, but ESS serves that point in filling those positions. But I think the question really is around the sustainability and funding, and we're working on that piece.
Yeah, and Ms. Brody, we're having, a lot of the conversations that we have right now with school districts are around long-term funding sustainability. Our goal is to, from a financial standpoint, to basically enable these services to pay for themselves. Generally, we're successful in doing that through the reduction and kind of avoidance in additional out of district placements. And so that definitely is one of the key things that we always try to focus on. There is a lot going on nationwide right now, both at the Connecticut level with kind of the governor's office, and at a federal level that is looking towards more sustainable funding sources for school-based mental health. That includes Medicaid, which is a big piece of that. That in some states includes like commercial insurance. And so I think there's going to be a lot of changes that will take place here in the next 3 to 5 years. It's an area of education that's changing very rapidly. And our goal is to partner with HPS and just kind of help advise on the best solution for the district, and to make sure that this is financially sustainable for as long as you deem the services kind of important for your students.
Thank you for your information. Thank you for your responses. If Ms. Santiago could please add that to my list of things from talent management, like I'm hoping we could have a future workshop on that, just gauging all of what they do, planning, proactive, like sustainability, all those things around contracting out. And if that could be a conversation, Ms. Santiago, I would greatly appreciate it. But thank you all for all the information. Very important work, the mental health of our students.
Thank you, Ms. Brody.
Thank you so much once again, and you will be getting more questions. I really believe that, but thank you for your work. Thank you for your dedication. And Christina, we are going to move on to our next agenda items.
We have the math curriculum presentation, and we have Mr. Mario Carullo, our Director of Mathematics, on the call.
Good evening. Okay. Good evening. I am Mario Carullo, Director of Math, and I am excited for the opportunity to be discussing math with you tonight. So during our time together, we're going to take a quick overview of the Department of Mathematics, our programming as a whole. The purpose of this is kind of to situate our discussion within the broader work of the department. We are going to explore the curriculum review process and understand our curriculum implementation data to date, and review interim assessment data as it relates to effective implementation of the new curriculum. So our decision-making in the math department is grounded in 5 beliefs about teaching and learning mathematics. And I want to highlight 3 of these beliefs as they most relate to our upcoming exploration of both student data and curriculum implementation. So we believe that all students, including emergent bilingual students, can achieve course and grade competencies with access to course and grade curriculum and effective instruction. We believe that the commitment, expectations, content knowledge, and pedagogical skills of educators and their understanding of student learning affect the outcomes for students. We believe that changing student outcomes is dependent upon shifting teaching practices via individualized, collaborative, collective professional learning. So when we think about improving outcomes for students in mathematics, there are many components of an effective math program. So tonight we're going to be digging into 2 of these components. So we have our core Tier 1 mathematics. So the purpose of Tier 1 mathematics is to develop grade level knowledge and skills via access to course and grade curriculum and effective teaching and learning practices. So within your Tier 1 math curriculum, you have, first of all, you have curriculum. So in Hartford Public Schools, we have in K-5, we utilize Eureka Math Squared. Eureka Math Squared is an updated curriculum from the Eureka Math curriculum that we were previously utilizing. Our adoption of Eureka Math began in the 2016-2017 school year. And last year, we updated to the Eureka Math Squared, which is the program's update. Our new curriculum, which is highlighted here in yellow, is our cohesive 612 curriculum, where we are utilizing HMH's Into Math and Into AGA. This is the curriculum that we're going to be speaking to the review process about. Within a math program, there's curriculum, but there's also the instruction. So how a curriculum is implemented matters as well. So our curriculum, so with the instruction component is like we define what students and teachers are doing throughout the lesson. So our flow of the block outlines what does a math class look like. Our implementation support tool outlines what are the teacher and student actions that should be occurring within each component of the math block. The assessments are part of the curriculum as well in our Tier 1 math program. So the way that we are utilizing student data to inform our instruction is we start with readiness assessments. So readiness assessments, also called pre-module assessments, are assessments given at the start of a unit of study to determine whether students have the prerequisite knowledge or the vertically aligned Common Core skills aligned to vertically aligned standards from prior grade levels to determine whether students are ready for the grade level content. That data is then used to inform both Tier 1 and Tier 2 accessibility and intervention. We have daily formative assessments that occur, which is a quick one question at the end of every lesson to determine whether students have understood the content and to inform the next day's learning. Topic assessments occur, they're about 3 to 5 questions, and they occur about bi-weekly. So they're short assessments to check in on how students are doing in their learning. Our interim assessments, which is the other thing we will be talking about this evening. We have 3 interim assessments that lead up to our summative assessment, which is either Smarter Balanced or the SAT Suite. And of course, part of our math programming includes the professional learning, which is in service of building the content knowledge, pedagogical skills, and shifting teaching practices of our teachers. We also have the whole aspect of Tier 2 math programming, which we are not going to speak about tonight, but it is a component of the math program that also has factors into improving outcomes for our students. So when we talk about the interim assessments, so we're going to start by exploring our interim assessments. So the interim assessments measure student progress towards college and career readiness and are aligned to the Connecticut core standards in math and the district math curriculum. The standards assessed on the math interim assessments are outlined in our scope and sequences. The interim assessments provide actionable feedback to adjust ongoing teaching and learning strategies to improve students' attainment of curricular learning goals. Kindergarten and grades 1 and 2 students take interim assessments on paper pencil, with kindergarten assessments being primarily interview-based. Grades 3 through 8 and high school interim assessments are taken in Performance Matters, which is our assessment management system. So what I'm showing here is our 3 through 8 interim assessments. We primarily use questions that are on the Smarter Balanced interim assessment blocks. And what's important to note here is that the assessment questions are designed to target the aspect of rigor that is targeted by a standard. So what that means is when we think about adding integers, which is a seventh grade concept, we can see here that the standard 7NSA 1B, the standard itself speaks to understanding. So understand P plus Q as the number located a distance Q from P. And we could continue to read that. But what we could see there is like the assessment question. So the question aligned to that standard, such as Emmanuel added 2 integers, which condition will always give Emmanuel a negative solution when he adds 2 integers? Both integers have negative values, both integers have positive values. The reason why I'm highlighting this question is because this is very different from a simple question that would be, what is the sum of 4 and -4? So if the standard itself is targeting understanding, conceptual understanding, the assessment items are targeting conceptual understanding. Our interim assessment achievement levels for grades 3 through 8 are aligned to the Smarter Balanced achievement levels. So we have a correlation study where we looked at how students do on our interim assessments and then how they do on the Smarter Balanced assessment. And we found that there is a strong correlation between the two. So we use those same assessment bands when looking at our interim assessments. For grades K through 2 in high school, the achievement bands are there on the left. These are primarily curriculum-based items. So whereas with 3 through 8, we're able to use a lot of Smarter Balanced released items. For grades K2 and 9-12, we use curriculum-based items, and there's 2 examples of the types of items that students would be seeing on our K2 assessments or our high school assessments. Again, with the idea being that if a question is targeting understanding, conceptual understanding, that's what the standard is about, the question is going to look a little different from the procedural type of questioning that most of us are accustomed to from our own math education, which is, find the sum of 438 and 267. Very different from what is this, like explain your answer or show how you found the sum. So when we look at interim assessment data, we're looking at 3 measurements. So we look at the average test score. We look at the percentage of students scoring at or above the achievement level. And we're looking at the percent of students scoring in the red, which is the lowest level. We also look at these, we disaggregate the data to look at these by our multilingual learners as well as our students with disabilities. For the purpose of tonight and the limited time that we have together, we're going to be looking at the percentage of students scoring at above the achievement level, the percentage of students scoring in the red for all students. So we're going to go through a little bit of data. So what I want to quickly show here is this is showing interim assessment 1, which was in October, interim assessment 2, which was the end of January, and interim assessment 3 is actually happening this week. This week is the window for interim assessment 3. And what we see here in kindergarten is from IA1 to IA2, we have decreased the percentage of students in the red. We have increased the percent of students that are proficient. This is what we want to see happening in all grades. We don't see that happening in all grades. When you look at grade 2, we could see while we have an increase in the percent proficient, we also have an increase in the percent in the red. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what that means when we get to the analysis slide. So with our grades 3 through 8, this is being read the same way. We have 8 achievement bands here. We have a high level 1, a low level 1, a high level 1, a low level 2, a high level 2, etc. You can see those on the bottom. And again, we're looking at from IA1 to IA2. And what we want to see is what we see happening in 5th grade, where we have that decrease in low level 1s, but the increase in the percent proficient. So give us a minute to look this over. And then we have that same data looking at our high school interim assessments with Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2. And again, we have interim assessment 1, interim assessment 2. Interim assessment 1 is September. Interim assessment 2 was January, and interim assessment 3 is currently happening. Okay, so when we look at all of this data, what does it tell us? So in grades kindergarten, 5th grade, 7th grade, and Algebra 1. Those are the 4 grades right now where we feel as though we can celebrate, because we are seeing the decrease in the percent of students in the red, the increase in the average test score, which is not data that I showed with you in this presentation, and an increase in the percent proficient from IA1 to IA2. So those are the 3 measurements that we look at. So while the data that we're looking at right now is being looked at from the district level, what I do want to lift is that our instructional coaches, they dig into this data with schools and school principals at the school level to determine celebrations and opportunities and to inform their school math action plan. So we're looking at it from the district level, but knowing the data might look a little bit different at the school level, depending on the different things occurring in the schools. Another celebration we see is that the average test score for elementary multilingual learner students is at or near the average test score for all students. While that's a celebration in elementary school, when we move to middle school, that's where we see that the average test score has about greater than a 10% variance between all students and ML students. So we see a big transition in that data from elementary school to middle school. For our multilingual learners, and them demonstrating the same levels of understanding as their non-ML students. So where we see, grades 2, 3, and 6, these are the grades where we see an increase in the percent of students in the red, a decrease in the average test score, but we are seeing an increase in the percent proficient. So we want to see the increase in the percent proficient. We don't want to see the other 2 data points. This tells us that there's an issue with monitoring and accessibility. So how are we making the curriculum accessible to the students who are in the red or the students who are below proficient so they too can develop proficiency? So it's great that we are increasing the students who are near proficiency and getting them and increasing the proficiency there, but we're not meeting the needs of those other students. Now in grade 4, we have a different concern. So in grade 4, we have a decrease in the percent of students in the red, which is good. We have an increase in the average test score, so the average kid is improving, but we have a decrease in the percent proficient. So what that tells us is we have a rigor concern, and this is happening in grades 4 in geometry. So that's telling us that we're not exposing our students to enough grade level content for them to maintain and keep up grade level competency. So this is just a little bit of why it's important to be looking at all 3 of those data points when we're looking at the interim assessments, because altogether they could tell a different story. And we could see here that with grade 8, all 3 data points that we are looking at are trending in the negative direction. And we need to better understand what's happening with grade 8. I do know that we've had a lot of disrupted teaching occurring, and I do know that our district's goal has been around grade 8 to really raise awareness around the challenges that we've historically been facing with grade 8 data. So now that we experienced a little bit of our interim assessments, we're now going to talk about our curriculum review and our implementation. So the Common Core State Standards for math define the content that students are expected to learn by grade. Curriculum details the instructional strategies, instructional materials, and the assessments that will be utilized for students to learn the grade level content defined by the Common Core. Research confirms that a guaranteed and viable curriculum is the variable most strongly connected to student achievement outcomes. A guaranteed curriculum implies that the grade level content is taught as intended, regardless of the teacher to whom a student is assigned. A viable curriculum indicates that there is adequate instructional time available to teach the content as intended. So, why did we adopt a new curriculum in middle school and high school? So we had internal and external feedback on the district math curriculum in a review of student achievement data in math that lifted sufficient evidence to call for a review of district curriculum for middle and high school math. So thinking about the student achievement data. So we could see here in this in the data here, so the top one is looking at all students, and on the left-hand side, we have our 6 through 8 Smarter Balanced Assessment data and our grade 11 SAT data. You could see from 2015 through 2019, our data is trending positively. So for all students, yes, there are some dips here and there, but we could see a positive trend in our improving the vertical scale score for our students. That is seen in both the middle school Smarter Balance as well as the grade 11 SAT. That positive trend that we see occurring for all students is not the same positive trend we see happening for our English learners. So while we could see increases in the vertical scale score for all students, we also see decreases for ML students in those same years. So what that was telling us was that with the growing percentage of multilingual learners, our curriculum, we were not meeting the needs of our of many of our students. The TNTP study that was done in the Hartford Public Schools, one of the biggest things that it revealed was we had lacking coherence in our curriculum. So prior to the adoption of the 612 math curriculum of HMH, we had an aligned K-7 curriculum with the utilization of Eureka Math. We then had Carnegie Learning in 8th grade in Algebra 1. And then we had the state model curriculum for geometry and Algebra 2. So while all of these curricula are considered high quality instructional materials, the lack of coherence between the programming was resulting in some incoherent instruction. So I feel like the way to make the most sense is just through an example. So K-7, as I said, we were previously using Eureka Math, and in 7th grade, Eureka Math teaches the idea of solving two-step equations utilizing take diagrams. When students went into Carnegie Learning in 8th grade, Carnegie Learning utilized mobiles as their visual form to understand how to solve multi-step equations. So because of the shift in the curriculum from 7th grade to 8th grade, that 8th grade curriculum utilizing mobiles, students were not set up for success because they hadn't been using mobiles in the past. So that's what that was one of the factors that initiated our decision to adopt a continuous 612 math curriculum. So with our K-5, we remained and we just updated the curriculum to Eureka Math Squared, and in 612, we had the new curriculum that is new for the school year. So what did that curriculum, the curriculum review process look like? So in phase 1, we developed the criteria for adopting new curriculum. So we elicited input from families, students, teachers, and leaders. And based off of the feedback that we received from these people, we developed our criteria. So what is it that we want our new curricula to include? And we weighed the criteria based on what was most important and what was not. In phase 2 of our curriculum review process, we had an internal curriculum review team that was utilizing our evaluation instruments to determine the curriculum that was best for us. The internal curriculum review team members invested substantial time in the middle and high school curriculum review process. The process required participants to continue reviewing resources outside of the team meetings. There were honest, respectfully challenging discussions that occurred during the meetings to come to consensus on the curriculum that best served both middle and high school well. The internal curriculum review team utilized a consensus decision-making to achieve 100% agreement with the team's recommendation. Now, although the internal curriculum review team included math coaches, district leaders, school leaders, the internal curriculum team, ultimately, it was the teachers on the committee that influenced the team's recommendation. So it was the teachers that were on the committee that completed the scorecards, and it was the teachers on the committee that came to consensus on the curriculum that we were then going to use for middle and high school. We had others involved in the process on that team, but they were there as to share alternate perspectives, but the curriculum was selected by the teachers. The external curriculum review, the middle and high school external curriculum review team meeting, which included parents, district partners, community members, university partners, and Office of Family and Community Partnerships representatives. They met to look at the recommendations and also talk about what was most important to them. Two things really came out of that committee. Number one was the request for at-home learning resources for students to reference when completing homework or missed assignments. So what do they reference if they do not have class notes? And the second thing that really came out of that meeting was families cannot be expected to teach the content to their child, which meant that there was a preference for student-facing at-home learning resources being valued over family-facing at-home learning resources. So a lot of the different materials that the different curricula we were reviewing had, some had it being family-facing, some had it student-facing, and there was definitely a preference for having the materials there to support students directly. So that feedback from the external curriculum review team actually was pretty integral to the final decision we made to go with HMH, and especially with the use of textbooks at the high school after previously using work texts. So work texts are books that students write in, and textbooks have worked examples and whatnot. So our high school HMH into AGA curriculum does revert back to the use of textbooks. So phase one ended with the curriculum review process being outlined. Phase two ended with a recommendation, the recommendation was for HMH. In phase three of the curriculum review process, this is where we looked at the conditions, the implications of the recommendation on our programming, developing an implementation plan, determining budgetary implications, and then communicating the outcomes. Phase three ended with our curriculum implementation plan, which I'm going to speak to momentarily. And right now, here we are in implementation. So we previously used high quality instructional materials in grades 6 through 12. Although they were not all a coherent programming, they were all considered high quality instructional materials. But we needed to get implementation right. So one of the things we noticed in the past was implementation conditions had always been a challenge. So hence the need for developing a very detailed implementation plan. So there are many decisions made and actions taken at the school level that can facilitate or inhibit an effective curriculum implementation. Even in instances when the district may lead a strong adoption process, provide guidance about teaching practices, or offer ample professional learning, it is the school level factors that are the most important levers that affect the day-to-day teaching practices that impact student outcomes. Therefore, effective implementation leadership at the school level is critical. The 22-23 Mathematics Curriculum Implementation Plan outlines the systems and structures necessary to support implementation of the district math curriculum. So in the Math Curriculum Implementation Plan, we've clearly outlined the roles and responsibilities of everyone. That includes our Chief Academic Officer, myself as the math director, our EDSLs, our school leaders, our teachers, even our ANET partners and our math coaches. So what is everyone's role in implementing this curriculum with integrity? What is the professional learning for school leaders, teachers, coaches, and families? Our curriculum implementation guidance, so that includes instructional minutes, scheduling, flow of the block, our assessments. And lastly, the thing that was important was we know that in education, there are always tons of initiatives. So how can we couple these initiatives to maintain a focus on implementing this curriculum with integrity? One of the things that I'll speak to was the alignment between the school improvement plan for mathematics and the district math action plan, and having aligned action steps within there. There were a few other things there that we were done to align initiatives to keep mathematics curriculum implementation at the forefront. So it's great that we had this implementation plan, right? So we were implementing, and then we came back together in February as a mid-year to reflect on implementation. So in the middle of February, we had a team of executive directors of school leadership, school leaders, math coaches, our chief academic officer, our teachers attended, our ANET partners, and they met to collaboratively analyze and discuss teaching and learning data to identify celebrations and opportunities for improvement to inform the implementation plan to achieve the district's student achievement goals. So we reviewed a lot of different data. We looked at student achievement data. We looked at instructional data from our learning walks. We looked at implementation data on what was happening during PLCs, our professional learning communities. We looked at the leadership that was happening around the curriculum at each school, and we looked at perception data. So teacher perception data, school leader perception data, and math coach perception data, both about the curriculum and the implementation of the curriculum. So here we have some identified strengths that came out of the review process, and a few of the many opportunities that that came out from that meeting. So from that meeting, we identified several opportunities on where we can go next to improve outcomes for students and improve our implementation. So all of this led to our priority areas. So we cannot address all of the opportunities at once. So this led to our next steps. So to further support our implementation, these are our top 5 priority areas, with number 3 being our most immediate. So after going through all of our opportunities, the team then prioritized, okay, what are the things that we want to work on first? The first one being around this whole idea of tier 2 intervention in unfinished learning accessibility. So how can we support teachers with internalizing the coherence of the curriculum so that the methods used to address unfinished learning are aligned with and activate prior knowledge? The second area of priority was around lesson pacing and lesson internalization. How can we enhance our curriculum study protocols to better call out the story of the module or the topic or lesson to support teachers with facilitating coherent lessons and empower them to make informed instructional decisions that maintain the story of the lesson? The third one being what we are most immediately addressing, and this is around monitoring. How can we support teachers with using assessment data to inform and customize instruction? Just briefly, when you have a new curriculum adoption, teachers are very invested in learning the curriculum and doing what the curriculum says to do. And that sometimes that comes at the expense of then having the time to analyze the student data and then use that student data to inform instruction. So we just want to relift that aspect of the teaching and learning cycle. Our fourth priority is around school ownership of the math curriculum implementation. So how can we build teacher leader and school leader capacity to lead implementation and ultimately decrease the reliance that we currently have on math coaches? So how can we have more school ownership of the implementation? And finally, around vacancies and retention. How can we norm our process for supporting access to grade level instruction when teaching and learning is disrupted by teaching vacancies and/or mid-year resignations? And how can we better support a positive and collaborative teaching network among certified teachers of mathematics? So those are the 5 priorities that came out of our reflection meeting that we are currently working towards. And with that, I will open it up for some questions.
Thank you so much for that presentation. And I am looking to see if there may be a question or two. I know that it is now 5:59. I don't see any hands up. And oh, I do see a hand up, Board Member Brody.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I have questions that I know won't get answered in this meeting, but one immediate one is district-wide. is every school using Eureka Math as a district for the grades that, I guess what, elementary and middle school?
Eureka Math is K-5. And yes, all schools except the 2 Montessoris. The Montessoris follow the Montessori curriculum.
So what curriculum is for middle school, I guess?
HMH. So that was
And-
part of our new curriculum adoption, was having a coherent 6-12 curriculum. So this is our first year of implementation of the HMH curriculum.
And that's through 12th grade. Because I
Yes.
heard you referencing, what does it stand for?
HMH is the publisher, so it's I'm gonna get it wrong. Hoffman McDougall.
Yeah, Hoffman. Yeah,
No,
because it was
Flynn.
like a merger, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. And
yeah,
I'll submit my question to Christina around the because you mentioned some surveys and some teachers were a part of it and you kind of went with the teachers. I'll just submit my questions that are in reference to the makeup of those groups that were surveyed, and in the future, please don't exclude board members from such surveys. Thank you, though. I'll follow up with my questions to Ms. Santiago.
thank you.
Once again, thank you so much for the presentation, and it is now 6:01 and our meeting is adjourned for the evening. Everyone have a great evening and thank you for attending.